Hello, my name is Marcus and welcome to Tabletop Review. I'm sitting at my tabletop, although you can't see it right now, and reviewing something that you would use at your tabletop. Usually it's probably going to be board or, as today, card games. Today I'm reviewing the trilogy of games that is the Lost in Trilogy. This contains Lost in Valhalla, Lost in Straya, and Lost in Jurassica. Well, just before I talk about what I think of the games and how what I think of the game, what I'll give a score and my critique and stuff, let's head to the table and see how they're set up and played. Alright, here we are at the table, and let me quickly show you how you set up the game. And you're ready to play. Well, actually there's one more step in it, because the entire game is all about finding these power switches. You want to find 3 of these. The first person to find 3 of them is the winner. So you want to put in 3 of them for every player. So let's say it's a 3-player game. 1, 2, 3, or 9 in total. You would mix them in to this pile here called the Explore pile, and then every turn you would simply draw up 2 cards in total from whatever pile, you know, 1 from this, 1 from this, 1 from this, 1 from this, 2 from this one, does not matter. However you want to draw up the cards. And then whoever finds 3 power switches first is the winner. But what can you find in these piles? Let's have a look. Here's a little closer look at the 3 different piles. Here you've got Scavenge. Well, actually, here's a closer look at the 3 different piles. So you've got Scavenge, Craft, and Explore. So Explore is where you will find Explore is where you will find the power switches, but also your enemies. Craft is the place where you will find weapons to defeat your enemies. And Scavenge is where you will find materials to craft your weapons, to kill your enemies, to go through it. So, as I said, on a turn, you're going to want to draw 2 cards. You might draw the first 2 from the Explore deck, and you'll find 2 enemies. Simply put those enemies down in front of you in your little pile of enemies. Next turn you might want to draw up another one from here. Oh, I got another enemy. Let me show you quickly how a enemy looks. So, a bit of a fun sort of fact down here. And then how much damage it takes. This one takes 1 damage. This one takes 2 and 1. Now I've got 3 right here. I can have a maximum of only 4, which means I can only have 1 more. Well, let's draw up the next one and see. Oh, it was a power switch. How lucky of me. 1/3 of the way to victory. Let's say it's now my next turn. I'm now only allowed to draw 1 card from the Explore deck, because I have 3 right here. It doesn't matter that my next card I draw is another power switch. I'm not allowed to draw anymore from the Explore deck. So next course of action is to head into maybe the Craft one to see what I can get. And here you see an example of a weapon, how much damage it does, and how much it costs to make. So now I want to get a hold of some materials to build it. So I might draw up some materials here. This is how they look. Nothing really to note here. Still some fun facts down here. There's that on every card. Wood and metal. You also have cloth you can make to. Oh, there's nothing more. And here you can see an example of something to use for cloth. Advantage. Well, anyways, it's once again my turn, and now I have 2 weapons which needs this to be crafted, and luckily enough I have everything needed. So I discard my materials, just make a discard pile anywhere, and now I have these 2 weapons. deal out 3 damage and 2 damage. So that is 5 damage in total. And now on here I had 1, 1 and 2 damage, which is 4 in total. So I can defeat them. The only thing about that is I will lose 1 damage, because I will spend 5 to defeat 4. And that is lost. I will not get that back, because these ones will be discarded. My enemies will be discarded. And I lose it. Or we can rewind. And I choose to use just the 3 attack one to get rid of my strongest opponent and one of the other ones. And save this one 2 damage for whenever something else shows up. So that is the basic cards in the decks, but all of the decks have some special cards in them. Now I actually want to show you all the cards from all the games, because they vary a little bit in Craft and Explore, but in Scavenge they're basically the same. They are food themed. So in Lost in Valhalla, all you can get are different kinds of Norse feasts. You know, food themed. In Lost in Straya, what you can get is Straya, again, food themed. Then in Lost in Jurassica, you can actually get some different named things, but again, food themed, and they do the exact thing. You can get T-Rex, pterodactyl leg, chalk bar, amber pup, and a boiled egg. Now all of these do the same. They're completely free. You find them in the Scavenge deck, and they can deal 4 damage. What I think of them, I'll tell you a little bit later on. Let's look at the Explore deck, and in Lost in Valhalla you simply get health potions, doing the exact same thing as the feasts, simply giving you 4 life. A little overpowered, but not as overpowered as the Lost in Straya stuff. You get camps, and these camps get rid used to clear all of your creature cards or save for future use. Discard this card when used. Get rid of all your enemies. You can have the 4 strongest enemies, 5s and 4s, and you just get rid of them. Again, next segment I'll talk about that. Now in Lost in Jurassica you get a little bit of variety. You get a storage shed. Probably one of my favorite ones. So there's only 2 of these ones, but you found an abundant shed. You can pick an item card, which is a craft card. Or there's waterfalls, which is again simply +4. There's the text. You found a secluded waterfall, recover your wounds as you drink and rest. So it's like you rest and you get +4. Which means you get rid of your enemies, basically, for attack. It feels a little bit like there's something lost in the, like, you have health and recovery. And the final one is Craft, because this one becomes a little bit different. Now one thing I want to mention is that it is only called the Craft deck in Lost in Jurassica. In the other ones, it's simply called Item deck, or items. That's a little bit interesting, but let's start off with looking at Lost in Valhalla. You get 4 different ones. You get Draupnir. Steal someone's resurrection rune for yourself. A pretty decent card. Skippy's Axe. Choose a player to skip their next turn. That one will return. Schwalin. Give someone all your foe cards. Again, pretty powerful. But the thing I like about this one, it shows up once and then it's gone. And then Odin's Eye, look through 3 explore cards without showing anybody else. Keep any beneficial cards. A pretty decent thing. So basically they're item cards that give you a little bit of a one-time ability. There's only 4 of them. Maybe you wanted a few more different ones because this is a 1 to 6 player game. But it's okay, you know, you get something different to do than fight, and it's a little bit take that, of course. Think of that what you want. Then we get to Lost Straya, which have a lot of these ones, and they're quite different. So you get 2 roadkill, and that's choose a player to skip the next turn. So we get 2 skip a player's turns. In this one, you got a tattered map. And this one is pick up 2 additional cards this turn, so different ability. And then you have something interesting. Not this one, I was wrong about this one. But you have something you can craft, a rusty trap. Give someone all your creature cards. This card is good. What I like about this one is you craft it. The other ones you might be been able to craft as well, but you craft this one and you get an ability instead of an attack option. An interesting ability as well. And you also build this next one, a backpack. Store this card in your player once crafted. A backpack allows you to pick up an extra scavenge card each turn. So you build this one and you have an lasting throughout the rest of the game power. That I think is very interesting. But again, let me talk about it in the next segment. And finally, you can build a camp, which I think all of the camps should have been, whatever. You can build this one and it does the same thing. Get rid of your... Maybe you should use a little bit more because it's very powerful, but whatever. So those are some of the special cards that you will find in these decks as well, depending on the game, of course. And of course I'll talk about what I think about it when we're back up top. Which I think we should go now, because there's really nothing more to explore than playing the game. I think I've rambled on a little bit too long. So let's head back up and head back up to my final thoughts. And there we go, that is how you play the game and set it up, of course. Well, all of the games plus the little bit of extra knowledge that I wanted you to have in it. Now I got my notes over here, so I'll probably be looking that way a little bit just to make sure I say what I want to say. Otherwise I'm rambling on. But let's start with the setup. It's obviously incredibly easy. The only step, well, difficult step, I don't know, is splitting up the amount of cards. I get it. I like that they're putting in the amount you need to win per player, because it means that you don't really risk running dry of them, and there's not too many in the deck compared to the amount of players. Well, unless you're playing a lot more players, but it will make sure that there's not too many in the game, and nor too many in the deck, to make sure that it doesn't go too far. But that's a little bit of gameplay. But setup is obviously very simple, and that's lovely for a game like this. It needs to be simple and easy, and just like that. And the way I package it, basically just flip it out the box and get ready. So setup is actually a thumbs up for me. Very good. Now let's talk about the gameplay. Now the overarching gameplay for all 3 games is obviously very simple. Just draw 2 cards in whatever way you want. I do like that they give sort of this illusion of choice and strategy, because you know you're sitting there like, oh, am I gonna, or also a little bit, you know, push your luck, the illusion sort of it. It's like, am I just going to go for explore deck and then when the time comes go craft or whatever? But it's sort of just an illusion, because in the end it doesn't really matter. In the end, you're lucky or you're unlucky, you win or you lose. You know, maybe your friend will get stuck with a bunch of too many enemies and just not get any weapons that he can craft, that he can use. That could happen. Um, but yeah, basically it's about luck, but it gives you sort of this illusion of choice. And I think it's pretty fun. I think this little bit of a delusion of choice and what the things are. Set the luck aside so it not doesn't feel like, oh well, whatever I do I'm not going to win because I'm not lucky, whatever. Takes that away and makes it a little bit better than a completely luck-driven game such as Monopoly, for example. So I do enjoy them. I think they're pretty fun to play. But where I think their strength lies is in a younger audience. They say 8+. I think I'm going to lower than that. This is definitely where you should play them at, and I think there's a lot of choices within the games, talk about that in a second, that go towards a young audience, younger players, that sort of thing. But let's talk about a little bit more specifically each game of some of the gameplay choices and stuff. So let's start off with the first in the line, Lost in Valhalla. This one was released in 2020, just for your knowledge. Came through Kickstarter, and it's the worst one of them, I'll be honest right there. And there's a few reasons why. I've got a little bit more critique than I have thumbs up for this one. So first of all, there's a lot of free weapons. You know, normally you would craft the weapons, but in this one there's a lot of free weapons. In terms of 1 damage weapons, there's a decent amount of free weapons. I can understand the choices. But when you look at the 2 attack weapons, the ones that deal 2 damage, almost all of them. Almost all of the that's so close. I think it's like 90%. I didn't count it up properly. But almost all of the 2 attack cards are free. You don't have to craft them to use them. What? I can understand, as I said, the one attack ones. There's a few to add a little bit of ease into it, but like almost all of the 2 ones. Oh my god. Then we come into 3 ones. There's a few 3 attack weapons. All of them you need to craft, so that's nice. Now, maybe I wouldn't have such a big weapon with the big problem with the free weapons if it wasn't for the fact that enemies are really weak. They're 1 HP or 2 HP. That's it. It feels a little off when you see Thor and he's just a 1 HP. Or is he one of the 2 HPs? I can't remember. But it seems weak for him. Like he would be, if you draw him, it's one of those where you're like really unlucky and he's like 5 health and he's gonna clock up. And he will probably always be there because you really need some weapons to defeat him. But when there are 1 or 2 weapons, I like that there's 3, one that can wipe multiple, no matter if you have the strongest or not. I like that. But to have almost all of the 2 attack weapons, which are guaranteed to kill the strongest opponents, that takes away. That's a negative. That's 2 negative right there. Again, if there hadn't been that many free weapons, the weak enemies wouldn't have bothered me as much. If there wasn't as many free weapons, the weak enemies wouldn't have bothered me as much. Did I just repeat myself? I don't know. But you know, if one of them had been different, the other one wouldn't annoy me. But no, they're both like that. Then we have the health potions and the Norse feasts. I think that's a good idea. Having this kind of a pretty powerful thing you were lucky enough to draw. I just don't think it was executed properly. I think something like, I don't really know what it is. Like, I would rather remove them from the game than play with them. I don't know exactly what it is about it that I would change. But it's just to almost all of a sudden draw that, and again with the weak enemies, maybe that is it again. If the enemies had been stronger, would I have as much of a problem with it? Maybe not. One thing I want to say is that the special items, I really love them. I would love to have had more of them rather than the free weapons. I really like the idea of that. I'm someone who enjoys a bit of take that, so that doesn't bother me. But I like the fact that we can get them. In later of the games, one of the games, you could craft them, and I love that idea even more. Building on some of one of the best things about this game. And I do want to mention that the enemies are quite balanced, that they're 1 and 2 damage. Again, it's just the free weapons that is going to ruin that for me. Otherwise they're quite balanced, which is nice. So it doesn't get too Too difficult, but it's not quite too easy either. Well, then you got the free weapons, too easy. That's what I have to say about Lost in Valhalla. Let's move on to the second one, also released in 2020. Lost in Jurassica. Wait a second. Lost in Straya. That was the second one, released in 2020. And also through Kickstarter. Actually, I backed this Kickstarter before I'd even received Lost in Valhalla. And I'd barely gotten around to playing Lost in Valhalla before I backed Lost in Jurassica. And I immediately saw these problems with Lost in Valhalla. I still took the risk. And I'm happy for it. But anyways, let's talk about Lost in Straya. This one, there's almost no free weapons. But then one of the expansions that I have for it comes in and ruins that. That expansion adds a whole bunch of 2 damage weapons that are all free. But the other expansion doesn't do that. It adds more weapons that you need to craft. It's just the expansion that kind of ruins that it's really getting what the frick, well-rounded. I can't remember the word. What the hell? But well-rounded in terms of the strength and the freeness of the weapons. And then just that expansion. Too bad. Otherwise, it's already better on that one. The enemies, there's also some strong enemies. You got now 3 and 5 health enemies, which is nice. There's not too many of them. You balance it out. Balanced, that's the word. It's more balanced with the weapons, that's the word. And again, the enemies are as well a little bit more balanced. It's a little bit less of the totally weak 1 health, but still not too many of the stronger opponents. A bit more balanced, adding a little bit of difficulty because you can get the stronger opponents. Really love that. I do, however, think that the weather calamities you can get, I think it's an expansion or whatever, and the camps is missed opportunity. You know, a storm, a dust storm, a freak flood, whatever. You need a camp to survive that. I've loved it if it had been that. I mean, I know exactly how to implement it. You need a camp to get rid of these ones. It doesn't like damage anything. It still works as an opponent, but you need specifically a camp to get rid of it. And maybe it like does something. Like if you're in a dust storm, you can only draw less cards. If you're in a freak flood, you can have less opponents. I don't know, you know. It becomes difficult for you and you need to get a hold of a camp. This would change up the game a little bit, and I think really make it a lot more interesting. Also, although it would really go into the luck, because you might get 2 of these weather calamity things and just not be capable of drawing a camp. So maybe it's not quite balanced, but I really like the idea of it actually. Then there's the Straya, which is the same as the feast before. There's too much of it. Again, it's the thing I thought about. Maybe if there was a little bit less or something. It feels a little bit less problematic because the enemies are stronger, but I still think there's maybe too much of it. There's like 5 of it. I think there's maybe too much of it. And then you have the camps. They're OP as frick. Get rid of all your opponents. You can have the 2 5s and the 2 3 health ones. Know that. And like that, they're gone just because you are lucky with the draw. I dislike that. But I really love. You can build a camp, obviously, one of them. They just needed to do that with all the camps, and then they would be really good. A little bit more expensive to craft, maybe. But you need to craft if you want a camp. Mix it with the weather one. That's a really brilliant one. So that's sort of like something that's so close to being really good. I would really put this one higher. Maybe it would be my favorite if that was how it was. But as it is, Straya in the camps just make it too easy. Again, too easy. But as I said in Lost in Valhalla, this one, you craft some of your items. Some of them are still free. Some of them you craft to get a special ability, one-time use. I like that. They're not too expensive to craft. It feels a little bit more balanced. And that's something about this one, is that with the weapons and the enemies and now the items, it feels more balanced. And then in steps the camps and the Straya to throw it a little bit out. Otherwise, I think this is an upgrade to Lost in Valhalla and a progression in the correct way. That's great. Let's talk about Lost in Jurassica last. This one was released in 2021 instead of 2020. Still through Kickstarter and all of that. And this one, I think there's just like one or two too many free weapons. But like it's alongside Lost in Straya, it goes down that one and it feels a lot more balanced. Maybe just one or two too many. But not really a problem. It keeps the stronger opponents. Same like opponent options as Lost in Straya in terms of strength. Great, I already talked about that, loved it. And again, with the Straya might, this one also have different foods. I love that it's different named foods. That's pretty neat. But there's just a few too many. And then you have the waterfalls. There's fewer waterfalls, and it's like you rest to recover. There you have something. Feels a bit more balanced than they did food stuff. There's not that many of them. Sort of onto the log one. Feels a little bit more, you know, balanced. Pretty neat. I like that. But again, it's something where you go to rest and stuff. You could maybe do something with storms or whatever, like the other one with the weather and camps. That's an idea, close to having an idea right there. Love it. And then there is the storage sheds that you can find. Absolutely love those. There's only two of them. Maybe I would have wanted those instead of the waterfalls completely. And then you get to draw an extra card just once. I love that. And it's like random. You find it. Oh my god. It fits the theme perfectly. Which is something I didn't talk about in the other ones. Where I think the weather and camp thing, if that had been, like I explained, that would have been so suiting to the Lost in Straya, the Australia theme. Lost in Valhalla. The Norse Feast actually makes sort of sense. Because that's the thing about Vikings, well, at least you don't. And maybe the free weapons sort of make sense in terms of it as well. There would be a lot of weapons around because it is a warrior culture. So, sort of thematically it makes sense. Too bad it goes against the game itself. But I think they have some thematic things, all the games. But this one, the best with those storage sheds, really is a great little thematic thing for it. I really love it. It's this one-time use. Then you have, again, items. Great. They're still there. Still love them. This time you don't craft them. They're free, like in Lost in Valhalla. Which again, maybe I wanted to craft it. Then you have the backpack, which gives you a permanent upgrade. I love it. You craft it and you have a permanent upgrade. That's really great. The only problem is there's only one of them. So again, if you're lucky, get it, craft it, and now you have a permanent advantage to all of your opponents. If you want to, what is it that you get to draw from scavenge or craft? I can't remember right here right now. That's great, because maybe you need to draw from that deck, but you want to draw maybe one from all three decks. You now can. Or maybe you want to draw to explore and hope that you can, in the craft deck, get this one card, this weapon that you can craft with the items you already have. Great, you can do that now. It really gives you an advantage, and I would love to see just a couple more in it, so more opponents could be in on it. But otherwise, way more balanced, a bit more thematic. I really love it. I really love it, and it's definitely based on Jurassic Park. But yeah, I really like this one. You know, I lost the train of thought, something I didn't write down as I was talking here that I wanted to say about them. Oh, yeah, it's right. As I said, there's a few things in I talked about in Lost in Straya, Lost in Valhalla, a little bit Lost in Jurassica. It's like something that could bring it just up a notch, a little bit in like difficulty, and something maybe a little bit more for the older generation. But it feels like there's a few ideas that didn't get completely capitalized on that you could have easily made a bit more of. That's annoying to sit and play when I actually really like these games. I think they're really fun. But then you just have those few things where it's like, oh come on, you didn't even change it. You just need to add something. Come on. That's annoying. Definitely, it's there for the youth. That's young players, right? 8 and up. I think you can easily play at 6 or 7. It's definitely what it's aiming at, and that's where a lot of these decisions come in. I love the change from Lost in Valhalla to Lost in Straya and Jurassica with the enemies and the weapons. I don't think that takes away from it being a game for younger players, but makes it so that, you know, parents can have a little bit more fun with it. But it's definitely a game for younger players, definitely. I still think it's a decent, like, filler game. If you're playing some really difficult games, you just want a little stupid luck-based game, I definitely think these games are it. Or maybe if you want a quick game before bed, I think these ones are really good as well. Maybe there's some other ones you can recommend, but I think this would be really good. So that's talking about gameplay and what I think of the gameplay. As a filler game, and Before Bed is based on the filler on the gameplay. Now let's talk about the components. You might have noticed, let's grab it. The Lost in Valhalla comes in a different kind of box. I hate this box. It's a slide out box like this. The cards in here, and they immediately get a little bit folded around, as you can see. That's something that I hate. I can't live with it. That's terrible. But that is the kind of box he was capable of making in his first Kickstarter. After the semi-good success, he was capable of making boxes like this that flip open. And personally, I prefer ones where you remove the lid completely. This one's only flip. It's a minor thing. I prefer to pull it off. That's a minor thing, but definitely a way better box. Another thing that's a little bit annoying. You use 3 piles in the game. 3. There's 2 slots in here. Let me show you without spilling cards all over. 2 slots. A little bit wider, a little bit shorter. 3 slots. Amazing. But as it is, that's a little bit of annoyance. Again, a little bit of annoyance that it flips over instead of pulling off. But I think these things are just growing on me personally. This is perfectly fine. This is what you see in so many other these small card games where it's, you know, sorry, this tiny little box, 2 spots, bam, all the cards. That's nice. Let's talk about the rulebook real quick. They all sort of look like this. Let's start from here. They aren't 100% intuitive as to where you want to start reading, because obviously you flip through a book like this, so maybe you want to flip around like this, and if you do that, then you come to the right space and oh hey, it folds out like this. But maybe you'll grab the first page and be like, oh, it flips onto here and start here, and then you start from the back. So it's not 100% intuitive as to where you need to start reading from, but if you fold it all out and quickly look and like, oh yeah, okay, it's definitely from this side. It's pretty quick to see, but it's not 100% intuitive, and I just kind of hate this fold out one. I dislike that. I want pages, I want to flip through, and honestly I want that in all the games, or just one folded out to one piece of paper here, and on the back side you have text. I know some other games that have it like that, and I prefer a little booklet, but that's way better than this. I honestly do not like folding it out to that many pages double-sided. I don't enjoy that. And at the same time, when I say not completely intuitive, okay, yeah, no, it is. Like, if you flip it around, I was about to say maybe you would want to go from here, but no, obviously you flip around, read from left to right. So that's just me being silly in the moment. But a fine rulebook. It quickly explains how you play the game, adds a little bit extra, and some nice artwork throughout it. So it's a fine rulebook. I just wish it had been done better. You know, what is that, graphic design or whatever. That's a little bit of a minus on terms of that one. In terms of the cards, I like them. They're good quality. I think you can find better quality, but in terms of these small card games, these cards, they are perfectly fine. Adequate to shuffle. I'm not someone who's kind of bad at shuffling normally. And these ones slide through, they're kind of slippery enough to slide through each other, but not out of your hands. So, good quality cards, and honestly those are the most important thing, because this is a card game. You're 100% on the cards. They need to be good. And they are. They are good. So no complaints about the cards. Only the minor things that I'm personally against. Otherwise the cards, the quality I would expect from a small card game like this, good enough. Now, Question: does it lie to you? It's a little thing where I'm going to look at these at the bottom. 20-minute average playtime, 8+ ages, 1 to 6 adventures. Is that accurate or not? Well, the 20-minute average is pretty accurate. Like, I think it's between 15-20 minutes whenever I've played it. So, basic, very accurate. Accurate. That's where the thing where you add signal or whatever, signal or just power switch or whatever per player. So you have 3 for each player. That makes the time go up. If you had all of them in all the time, it would be way less if you were 2 players than if you were 6 players. So it really it balances it out. It balances out itself in terms of the playtime that way. 8 and up, as I've already stated, 6 or 7. If you've introduced a child to gaming before, maybe even 5. It's not that difficult. Maybe just remove the items, you know, because then it's just text in one corner that you need to worry about, or the symbols. And then all of a sudden you have a game that your child can easily play. Or, you know, storage chest or whatever, you know, the things with text. So it's just numbers and symbols, and you can play way younger. It's such a simple thing. And when you say up, I don't think a group of only 30-year-olds are going to enjoy this game that much. I think it's like children and adults will enjoy it together, because the adults love that the children are enjoying themselves. That's sound a little bit weird, but I hope you understand what I mean. So, you know, that's like it's a family game, let's say that. 1 to 6 adventurers. Well, due to the fact that you have the limited amount of victory token things, then obviously yes, you can only play 1 to 6. But honestly, I'm pretty sure I've played it where we were 8 or 9 sitting around the table, and it went perfectly fine. We could have, of course, have ended up in a situation where nobody could win because of the power switch or resurrection rooms. I can't remember which one we used, because they were all out. Then no one can win. Oh god. Luckily that didn't happen. If it happened, that would have been on me. 100%. I allowed that many players to play, and I should have known better. But I think you can easily just add some more resurrection rooms or whatever to it. Some rules about shuffling discard piles around. You can play more players if that's what you want, I'm pretty sure. But no, I would say it's fairly accurate in terms of what it says down here. It's fairly accurate. Only the age one is the only one where I'm like, you can go younger. So it does not lie to you. So a quick summary. What do I want to say in a quick summary? Lost in Valhalla was made too easy and too much for children, whilst Lost in Jurassica and Lost in Straya fixed that, but failed on a few other golden opportunities to become something more than simple luck-driven card games. So yeah, a lot of choices in these games were made for the ease of play for the kids. Younger audience I've written, but kids. But I would say it's still fun. It can be fun for an adult. I don't think a group of players, unless it's like they've just played a really heavy game, this one might be good. Otherwise it's most definitely for not avid players, gamers, or just families. That's where I think the strength of these games lie. If some of these decisions had been a little bit different, maybe I would say it was higher. So my final score is quite simple. Lost in Valhalla will get a 5 out of 10 from me. The things are keeping it down, but I don't think it's gonna go way below. It's just a middle game, you know, 5 out of 10, that's the middle. That's where I will put Lost in Valhalla, because of these few decisions that have been made and all of this. This is where I'm going to put them. It drags a little bit down, but I don't think it goes into being in the bottom half of ratings, because it's still fun enough, right? Whereas Lost in Jurassica and Lost in Straya, I'm going to give both of them a 6 out of 10. They are that little bit better because of, you know, diff weapons and enemies is the thing I'm pointing out a lot. And a few other things. Maybe Lost in Straya will go down to a 5 over time, whilst Lost in Jurassica will probably stay a 6 out of 10 for the time being. But that is my final score of them, and the final big question to answer in this little episode. Am I keeping these games? Lost in Jurassica and Lost in Straya 100%. I'm not 100% sure on Lost in Valhalla if it'll stay as far as long. For now, I'm keeping all 3 of these games in my collection because I'm likely to pull them off the shelf and play. I really do enjoy these games. I think they're quite fun. So yes, they are. I am keeping them all 3 for the time being. And that is my little review of these 3 games. I'll make sure to review some bigger and more complicated games. But for now, that is it. I hope you enjoyed. Hope I have not made it too long. Fingers crossed on that one. But if you enjoyed it, please consider liking the video and subscribing. And I'll see you in the future.